Namaste, welcome to Satsang. So today I wanted to spend some time focusing on an issue that an area of awakening that we touched upon in Thursday's Satsang, which I think is very, very important and perhaps the most important part of our awakening. And that really is also the simplest part of our awakening. But it may take some time to fully assimilate that. So it's worthwhile looking at it again and again and again, as it was for me. And that really is the issue of what we know ourselves to be, what we actually are in reality, and what that means for us. We all start along the pathway with the sense that we are a separate being. This is me here. This is me. This mind, this body is what I am. And then to try to explain what everything else is, our mind comes up with this idea of other. This is else, this is other, this is not me. Suddenly this is category of everything else is not me. And there is a core division artificially created right there, where it seems to be that there is me only here in one location, and everything else is outside of me, separate to me. And that persists for quite some time. And even perhaps when we've seen that we're not a separate being, it may persist for some time, that we find ourselves thinking about other beings and other things that I would like to get that are outside of me, separate to me. I'd like to get them here. Or maybe other things that I would like to get rid of, some emotion or something like that. So I wanted to just kind of spend some time really looking at the simplest part of awakening, but perhaps the most impactful if we spend some time focusing upon it. And again, we discussed it on Thursday and we went quite a way into it. So I really want to continue on that thread. What does it mean then if we're not a separate being, actually? What does it mean for our life? What does it mean for our karmic patterns? What does it mean for our body, for our finances, for our relationships? Is there one thing that we could focus upon that would eliminate all of our perceived issues? Is there one thing we could put attention on right now and sustain attention on that would take us all the way home? So what is the most important thing to focus on? Is it to focus on transcending our karmic patterns? Or is it to find out who those patterns belong to? And if they're actually ours? It's kind of taken for granted, isn't it, that this thing that's going on in my head is to do with me? And what if that very premise isn't true? That because it's going on in my head means it's got nothing to do with me. Strange way to think about things, I know, but so what are you? Can you really define yourself? Having come this far along your pathway, however far along you've come, how can you define yourself now. Can you find a separate being that is you, first of all? Let's take a moment right now to look. Can you find an entity that's separate? I know we did this last week, but it's worthwhile doing it again. When you look for yourself, not your body, not your thoughts, not your emotions or your relationships or relationships or experiences, but the one to whom they belong. When we say my thoughts, my emotions, what are we actually talking about? Can you find anything that you could say is a separate person, a separate being, inhabiting in and around or hanging out in the body? And you actually look beyond there seems to be a separate being here. It feels like I'm experiencing like a separate being. What actually is it that you find? We find actually an answer that our mind doesn't really know what to do with. We find the absence of a thing, the absence of an object called me, the absence of a someone, and the presence of something that is not limited, not a thing at all. It doesn't have a shape. It doesn't have any edges. So we're just checking that out, actually, looking one more time together. What actually are you? Can you describe yourself in terms of what you are? Or is it more like what you're not? You are shapeless, formless. Yes, there's a form, a body appearing in you. Are you a tangible or intangible? And what does that actually mean if you can't find a definitive separate person that has all of these karmic patterns, all of these issues and challenges? This separate person that is on a journey to awakening and is on a journey to embodying this awakening in a process. If you can't actually locate the person, the separate being that is hoping to get something out of this satsang, sure that it's not there yet, not having actually arrived yet at awakening fully. If you can't find that separate being other than a vague feeling, it seems like there's someone here. It feels like, I keep experiencing like there's someone here, but is there actually? What if this was the most important thing you could put your attention on? Because in reality, there are only two categories, two ways to exist. And that is as a separate being or as the infinite space in which all beings are appearing. Infinite. If we take an example of the room that you're sitting in, there's the objects, the things in the room and the space in which all of those things are appearing, the room itself. And if we discount the things, there's only the room left. We discount the objects. And if you're not an object, if you're not a someone somewhere, that only leaves the space of being, thinking itself to be a person when it takes the shape of a human body. And for me, I saw many times that I couldn't find this separate being. Over and over again, I saw it. But it took a little while before I realized what that actually meant, what that meant. That I must be then the infinite space of being. And I denied this and I denied this because I didn't feel infinite. I still felt like someone somewhere. And I had this idea, this is what I really want you to hear, that once I feel infinite, then I'll admit I am. But it never works that way around. I must keep my attention on the fact that I must be infinite, everywhere. That which has no shape cannot have any edges or boundaries, ever. That which is formless never comes to an end, it goes on forever, in all directions, for all time. So sustaining attention on this, what am I actually then? If I'm not a thing appearing in the space, if I can't find the thing, the separate being that's me, what remains then for myself? It is the self. And what took me a very long time to figure out, that I must sustain my attention on that knowing, that seeing, and see it again and again and again. And only then do I begin to feel spacious, infinite, feel like I'm not limited at all. Only then do I start to feel not separate to anything or anyone. And it became clear to me that even though I'd seen many times I wasn't a separate being, if I was still thinking about other beings and other things, this hadn't fully hit me, hadn't fully taken root deeply, deeply. So have you really given this enough room to kind of ponder, enough time? What does it actually mean to be infinite? While you're still having this body too, that you can experience the sense of finiteness, the sense of being someone, but not actually. Get to play with that sense for 70, 80, 90, 100, whatever years. And let's find out what it really means that there isn't a limited being living in the body. Let's find out what that means for the rest of your pathway and journey. If you are, in fact, everywhere that you could be, not, in fact, absent from anywhere at all, right now, even though you might still feel limited at the moment, what work then do you have to do? Surely this sense of being everywhere will grow to override any kind of karmic pattern that seems to be going on with an other being, someone else. Surely this knowing must begin to replace the sense that we're separate to other things, everything else. And the most important thing I ever managed to achieve was to keep my attention on this one thing, this one point. What does it mean if I'm everywhere? And will I look at that now, even though I don't feel everywhere? And as I realize bit by bit that I'm not separate to this being or that thing or that place, that it's all happening inside me, inside you. These words are being spoken by you. They're being spoken by you and heard by you at the same time. How cool is that? It's pretty awesome. Has it really hit you that everything every sage has ever said, ever, was you talking in a body that lived hundreds of years ago? Everything that's ever going to be said by any human being is also you. And that maybe all of our issues as human beings, all the challenges we face today, could be stemming from this particular thing. Maybe we haven't kept our attention on this most important thing for long enough. And I did the same thing. You know, don't think that I suddenly saw this and went, right, I'm going to keep my attention on this. You know, attention wandered back to problems I had with other beings, you know, and things that I needed that were outside of me, seemingly. Money, time, energy, patience. But I eventually arrived at a point where I recognized I was never going to fix those issues. How can you fix karmic patterns that involve beings that don't actually exist? How can you ever achieve that? They don't exist as separate beings, but they are your own self. And what happens when we maintain attention on this long enough? What happens to those karmic patterns? Could it be that we reach a point where we can just kind of dismiss them? I choose not to kind of entertain that anymore. A simple choice. So if you're struggling to overcome some kind of karmic pattern, where are you trying to do it from? From the everywhereness or from the somewhereness, the someoneness? It's not arrogant for you to admit that you actually are everywhere. It is the truth. It is the truth. It is already so. If you won't admit it to yourself right now, would you be willing to soon? Don't wait to feel like you're the Buddha before you admit it, because it will never work that way around. And I'm not talking about, you know, these people on Facebook that sort of proclaim to everyone that they have reached enlightenment and all of that stuff. Just to yourself. It must be to yourself. I must be everywhere. If I'm not a someone in the universe, I must be the universe, actually. Because there's only two categories of things. Things and that which all things appear in. If I'm not a thing, I am the subjective space in which all things appear. And that isn't limited. And from there, it'll become clear that everything that's appearing inside this space is also you. If you are the infinite space, everything arising out of it, taking shape, must also be you. All of it. All of it. And then it's only a very small step to the realization that there is nothing to be scared of, nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to feel guilty about, absolutely nothing to forgive yourself for. All that seemed true when we believed ourselves to be a someone. So don't wait to feel peace, love, and joy before you admit that you are infinite, because peace, love, and joy come from the realization of that. There isn't anyone else here except you. That's what it means to be infinite. And the whole rest of the world, initially everyone else around you, but then eventually the rest of the world will begin to reflect that seeing. This is the most powerful thing you could do for the planet right now, for humanity as a whole, to be willing to admit what you actually are inside your own heart. Your mind will never reach a point of feeling comfortable enough to admit this. It doesn't matter. After about 3 years, I figured that out. It's never going to get there. And I just, all right, let me go with it anyway. Have you noticed how there's always some reason why you shouldn't admit it yet? Always some person, always something that you need to get rid of. I want more of this or less of that, and then I'll be infinite. More of this person, less of that person. It has to be the other way around. If I could leave you with one message, it has to be the other way around. It has to be. And then it'd be clearer and clearer where you're imagining the existence of other beings still. And much simpler to just kind of, you've been in a much higher place energetically to just say, that's not true, actually. I'm making that bit up again. I wandered back into insanity. It takes a little courage sometimes for a human being to admit something that is so very different to how other people see themselves and think the rest of the planet thinks. There's a reason that you're hearing these words now, and that's because you're ready, you want it, and it's time. If just a few beings admit this to themselves inside, or a few bodies in the one being, there would be a shift on this planet that would change everything. And it doesn't mean you won't be able to function as a human being. Doesn't mean your life will fall apart admitting this. Nobody else will know that anything is different for you except you. Well, they might just kind of recognize that you kind of chilled out and happy most of the time, But they won't be like, oh my goodness, you're awakened, They just won't know. Be your little secret. And if you have already admitted this to yourself, can you embrace it deeper? Where are you still thinking about other beings? Other things? Do you have problems with things that belong to you or don't belong to you? Is there any things really? Everything your mind is thinking about and everyone is your own self. When I really understood that, I began to undo the mind. There's really no point in thinking so much when what you're thinking about is your own self already. When mind starts to grasp that, even it chills out a little and then a lot. currently in the middle of a retreat that I'm running, helping to run, guest speaker. And last night somebody admitted this to themselves in front of everyone, and it was beautiful. I am that. And then I asked what problems remained for them, and they said nothing. That's not to say they might not go back a little to pick up some imaginary problems. There's the first step. There's the first step, isn't it? To admit this. You're never gonna feel ready to admit this. Never. But you can just do it inside your own heart. What does it mean if I'm already free? If I'm already infinite? If I never was separate, despite how real that dream seemed to be, that illusion seemed to be? Is there any way out of all the issues you're facing without admitting this? Not really. Sometimes I get the real urge to just kind of lock the door and stay here for an hour and keep going on and on and on, hopefully somebody will pop open or something. But we only have the room for 2 hours, you'd be glad to know. So I'm gonna see if I can go through at least one or two of these questions, and then if there are any questions online, feel free to raise your hand on Zoom and stick your hand up in between if there are. So this one says, "Hi Helen, namaste. I've been following you from the moment I randomly found your book, Dissolving the Ego. I have a query. When I sit in meditation to notice the space, a sudden pain arises in my right ribcage area, which I trace to be coming from the spine. What should be my approach to it, please? Please guide me." So a sudden pain arises. Isn't that funny how that happens when you sit to meditate? You're feeling really, really good, and then you sit down to meditate, and you start yawning or falling asleep, or pain comes up. If it's only happening when you sit to meditate, it's most likely resistance, because the practices in the Dissolving the Ego book are very direct, very powerful. So it's probably something trying to take attention away from the meditation practice. And the easiest way to get to that is just to ask that pain what it wants to tell you. What does it want to tell you? Maybe it has a message to tell you. And if it does, it will tell you. It will show you some thought pattern that's still being believed in. And if it is resistance, it will just stop. My sense is that if it's only happening when you sit to meditate, then it's probably just some mind's attempt to distract you from your meditation. And it has an infinite number of ways to do that, doesn't it? So ask it what it wants to tell you and see what comes from that. Next one. Oops. Hi, hello Helen, thank you so much for your pointings, which are so clear and direct. I would like guidance on an issue connected to my relationship with my identical twin sister. I'm working towards a true seeing of my non-separateness from all beings. At the same time, I am experiencing a strong need to separate from my sister and become very frustrated at others who perceive us as identical. This is affecting relationships we have in common and our own relationship, which at times It's very immature, to say the least. We are in our 60s, so these are entrenched patterns. Do you have a question I could contemplate to challenge this dynamic, which brings up anger and frustration and results sometimes in hurtful behavior? With deep thanks. So, first thing I want to say is just because you begin to see that you're not separate to anyone or anything doesn't mean that you're not automatically going to want to move away from some beings. Or I had this idea that when I realized everyone was me, I wouldn't mind being around everyone, you know. And actually, the opposite happens sometimes. The more I stopped thinking about that being and realized they were me, there was a urge to move away from them. Not out of judgment, just a lack of resonance with where they're at in their own pathway. So maybe this urge to move away is love emerging. What's best for me and this being right now might be to have a little space, you know, a little distance. So I would, as to the question, I would look at these emotions. It brings up anger and frustration, and sometimes results in hurtful behavior. So I would look at the anger and the frustration. What are they saying to you? They have a message to tell you, emotions, a deep core belief inside. When I looked at anger myself, there was a real deep sense of feeling limited. I can't get what I want. Powerless, limited, finite. What I want in any particular situation may change, but as it may be in this relationship with your sister, what is it that you want for this relationship? And is there a sense that you can't have it? And can that be true if you are infinite? If you are also your sister? Can it be true that you can't get what you want here? Strange, isn't it? I am also my sister, but true. So what is the anger saying? What's the feeling that it wants to tell you? I would bypass the thoughts your mind has about your sister and the relationship and go to the emotion. The emotion is hiding a real core belief in there that really wants to be examined. So I have one more question here, but if there are any questions online or in the room, yep. We'll come to you, Sarah, in a moment.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good.
Good stuff.
I was trying not to giggle every time I looked at you.
I know, I'll try not to look too.
We'll see how we get on.
Yeah, I feel like I've been, I don't know, awake, whatever it is, I've been that way for quite a while. But it just feels, but I knew if I really was, or I sense if I really was, there'd be a relaxation in my body and my mind and a kind of letting go and like everything's okay. But there isn't. And I feel like there's, we spoke about it a long time ago, but the film The Matrix, there's the baddie who wants to be plugged back in.
Yeah,
now
I want to go back to sleep.
Yeah, I sense there's a big part of me in Rich that's very scared and very in denial, and just at the same time as I'm listening to you, part of me is going, yeah, that's all fine, I agree with everything you're saying. There's another part of me just has got my fingers in my ears and is screaming.
Run for the door.
Yeah, and I don't see a way around that. I've tried every trick I can think of. I can say even hallucinogenics and things like that, but all it does is the hallucinogenics actually made me see just how much, because when I was in that state, I was like, I don't want to know this anymore. I don't want to know any of this. Shut up. I don't want to know any of it. So I know that's what's going on, but I just feel kind of trapped. I'm not rich, but I'm experiencing a lot of
You're kind of halfway, you've seen, but it hasn't fully
deepened. And I'm in a lot of pain with it. Physical, mental, or emotional, or all of the above? Yeah, it kind of goes around. Funnily enough, it goes into my spine sometimes, but I know that it's not a real thing, because when I'm more relaxed, all these spinal issues I'm having, they completely go away. I ran a marathon a few weeks ago because I was relaxed and just go away. So I know that's just some sort of sign.
It's an energetic thing.
It's
that comes,
energetic,
from the resistance. So
but yeah, it waxes and wanes very quickly between physical pain, mental pain. Yeah, I mean, last night I was in bits. I woke up this morning with a big smile on my face. I seemed so unstable in a sense. Not quite mentally ill, but definitely not stable.
It feels a little that way, doesn't it?
It
when
does.
You're kind of swinging from one extreme to another.
Yeah.
It feels very much. Sometimes it's clear, and other times I just want to go back to sleep. Actually, plug me back in. Something like that going on. And if it's perhaps the worst place to be, because you've come too far and seen too much to actually go back to sleep now. So you kind of, it feels like you're stuck. Remember that place. And let me ask you a weird question. What is it you feel you need to do to resolve this?
Rip the plaster off.
What does that actually mean, though? Rip the plaster off. What does it mean?
Face fears that I think will destroy me and kill me and send me insane, but really they'll set me free.
Okay.
But I've done even that before, or that happened to me before. And again, it lasted for a month or two. And I was like, well, like you said, life was just kind of easier and I was just relaxed. And then the old patterns of ego and sort of re-entrenched themselves and got back in the driving seat where they currently reside.
I want to suggest that the issue isn't what you think it is. Okay. And you might have to kind of listen to this again and again and keep it in your awareness, keep reminding yourself of this. Most times when I face this impossible challenge, it's because I was trying to do something I didn't have to do. So and that's why I was asking what you feel you need to do to get out of this mess. What if all you needed to do actually was not to face this mountain of fear, but to accept that there is nothing for you to do now, right? And the tension, extreme tension in the body, which is resulting in physical pain and all of that, like we discussed, is actually a reflection of a sense that you have to do something really difficult and you can't do it. Can you sense that feeling inside? I have this mountain to climb and I can't.
Yeah.
I've tried and I've tried.
I found myself at times being so angry at sort of God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, because it's like, really, I'm going to swear, fucking me over here. Like I'm doing more than I think most people would ever do. Yeah. But yeah, you then going, and now this, like that can't be the way, it can't possibly be.
So having come to that conclusion, that this can't be the way, I'm trying to solve this issue, it isn't working.
Yeah.
And I've tried every which way I can think of and more. Will you admit that this might not be your issue? Maybe it's not your job to resolve these things inside you.
It's not, but I don't know how to get out of my own way.
If you can sustain attention bring more attention to, this is not my issue, this is not my problem. There is nothing else for me to do. Yeah. Because the moment you feel you have to do something about it, you're living as a separate being again. Okay. Take your time, it's okay. And this was the hardest thing for me to accept. The hardest thing. So I totally feel, can remember how that feels. You have done so well already. And you have done enough already. Why do you feel, this is not a question you have to answer outright to me here, but just to consider moving forward. Why do you feel you have to do more? And when I looked at that question, there was a deep unworthiness that came to the surface.
That was the exact word I was
Because
thinking in my head.
I can't just actually be it already. I can't just actually admit that I am it already. I have to keep finding a problem to solve. And if I find an impossible problem to solve, I can keep going with that for years. And we have done, haven't we?
Yeah.
So just an understanding that this isn't your issue. It's been sold to you by mind as if it is. And we all buy it. We all buy it for a while. And then spending some time recognizing, if I was you now, I'd spend most of my time, well, I am you, but you know what I mean? Why do I think I have to keep pushing this boulder uphill? Can I actually ever arrive, or can mind ever arrive at worthiness that way? Or can I simply instead begin to entertain the fact that I'm already worthy, that I've never been unworthy? Why do I need to keep punishing myself to prove something? Can you see? Something says, well, when I go back to God, if I've really, really worked really hard, then I'll feel worthy, and God will say, yep, you're okay, you can come back. And there starts this whole cycle of sort of self-punishment over and over again.
It's like an evil God in the mind, and that'll never be enough.
How our mind sees it, yeah. It never works because the mind can't actually recognize whether you're worthy or not. It can't see what you actually are.
Yeah.
So it's trying to work towards an impossible goal. It gives you this seemingly very important, seemingly spiritual problem that you have to fix so that you can prove your spiritual worthiness and muscle by doing it. And then we can't do it. It never actually resolves. So we go around again. See, look, we're unworthy because we can't fix this problem. You see, all of this is unworthiness, isn't it? Really at the root of it. I can't really relax and just admit that I am that, because if I do, God may come and of course we don't think like this rationally, but something deep energetically in the core of our being is saying, I've got to be ready when I go home. I've got to be good enough when I go home, and I'm not good enough yet. And you can't fix that because it's never been true. Just keeping your attention on that, being willing to see that again. This is not something I can resolve. It begins to soften the division inside. It hurts so much in the body because in those moments you're living as a separate being trying to do something. And that is so out of alignment now with what you've seen already about yourself that it literally hurts. It cuts off all the life force, shows up everywhere, physically, mentally, emotionally, everything. It's not a satisfying answer to mind. Mind wants to reach a conclusion where you feel good enough.
I listened to it a few times. And
it was the hardest part of it all for me, was to admit and to want to keep my attention on this long enough that it actually really hit home. Because we could discuss it today like this, and it's had an impact. I can see that. But then you can go right back to your old thinking when you get in the car to drive home without realizing. We all do it, don't we? So what can you do to make sure that you keep this fresh in your awareness? You know, can you talk to other people about it? You know, that in the Sangha. Can you watch this again and again? Can you write yourself a note, stick it on your phone? Whatever it is you need to do. Can you get a sense of it?
Yeah.
Knowing that mind is going to do its best to make you forget what we've just said.
I'll try and enlist mine to help me with the task.
Might not be the most effective way, but yeah. You can see the core of the issue. Here's a problem that you can't fix, that you've been trying to fix to feel good enough. Can't fix it because it isn't true. You don't have to keep creating all this disturbance I kept creating disasters in my life again and again in an attempt to prove, overcome them and feel good enough. And after a while, this isn't working. It's just not working.
Yeah, it's crazy. Half my life's so brilliant, but I just seem to be able to keep.
If you find that, dig deep down inside to that part of you that really loves truth, and it will help you accept that you must already, if we really love truth, we must eventually come to accept what is true. And the truth is, you are already perfect, whole and complete. Despite what's going on in your life, despite what's going on in your mind, despite what's going on in your emotions, all of that is because we haven't admitted, in a reflection of.
Yeah, it's always the emotional side. Like, even when you say those things, I know they're so true. When I look at my babies, I think it don't matter what they become. If they could be the worst human beings that have ever lived, but I know that they'd still be perfect and loved.
Yeah. And
I'm no different, surely.
if we do love truth, and I know you do, otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation, obviously. Eventually truth will out over illusion, and the illusion is that there's something else you need to do to make yourself whole again, or something like that, or something else you need to be whole again, and some spiritual task that you can perform or mountain to overcome that will finally get you there. And it's just never going to be that way. I totally get it, because this was the hardest thing for me to admit to myself. I could admit that I was formless, but then when it came to stopping working on myself in an attempt to be that formlessness, be worthy of it, I could admit everyone else was except me, and how arrogant of us to say I'm the only being in the entire universe that isn't good enough. God created everything in this perfection, and I'm saying, yeah, but not me. I'm flawed or something.
Yeah, my mind even uses everyone else's perfection to go accept you. Yeah.
So seeing what the core of the issue is, it's not about facing these fears or anything. You've done that already. You've had the courage. You've been there, done that. It's just about some worthiness now, and whatever it takes to keep your attention on that. Something has shifted even here in this conversation, which is why I've taken this time to really go through it, because I'm sure everyone is resonating with it as well. Everyone. We're all trying to prove it to ourselves somehow.
Mind will always feel unworthy though. It's left almost circumvented.
Yeah. Which is why I'm saying don't even try to fix it.
Yeah.
I tried so hard for so long, as I'm sure everyone did, to feel good enough. Good enough to sit in a seat like this and admit and teach like this. And I never arrived at that. I just kind of sidestepped it in the end, which is really unsatisfying for my mind. It's like, yeah, but, when do we get the final badge saying you are worthy of enlightenment? It never happens.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. It was wonderful. Okay, Sarah, when you're ready.
Hi, Helen. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I've been very well. So this afternoon, while I was taking a nap, I was able to I was able to say, keep a distance, keep a space from me as a space, and then the mind is carrying all kind of activities.
Mhm.
So, and then I noticed the difference, like probably 99.9% of the time, like the mind is like I am a limited being, and then the mind is like bigger than me. So I was lost in the mind. I was lost in all kind of things, talking with people or doing my work, like as a limited being, and then you are wholly being wrapped in things in the mind, rather than what we are discussing here, saying we are the space, everything is inside me. I still like a lot of time, like say, if I'm tired, if I'm hungry, if I'm depressed, if I'm in a very low energy, it's very like there's more chance for me to feel being limited, rather than it's very rare chance for me to feel I am the unlimited thing. Everything happens within me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, the condition has to be right to feel that.
What would the right conditions be? Do we have to wait for the right conditions to feel infinite? Or is it the other way around? Because left alone, your mind would keep thinking the same old thoughts about being limited and finite, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And when I really began to it's up to me to kind of not discipline or marshal my mind, but to take the lead. Otherwise, it's just going to run off on its own, thinking about other beings, other things, and I'd end up feeling very, very separate and limited in that. And when I started that process, probably nearly all of my thinking was as a separate being. When I really saw, actually, my mind will be thinking about that stuff until I really keep my attention on what I actually am. And if I can bring my attention back to that for as often as possible during the day, then reminding myself that there isn't anyone else to think about, actually, or anything else, that sense of limitation then begins to dissipate. Because probably right now, most of your thinking is about being a separate, limited being, isn't it?
So like the attention, like the sense of knowing, it has to be allocated on whether the space or being this particular sensations, thinking, stories. Because when it's allocated with this kind of sensations, then there will be separation from, there is a body here and then others. And then if allocated with the space, this will be no difference than other things.
Yeah. If my attention goes to the things, the objects, the phenomena, more than the space in which those are appearing, the very fact my attention is on those things, those other beings that I think are there, I'm going to feel limited and separate to them, just because my attention is on phenomena. If my attention is on the space in which they're appearing, the infinite space of my being, I'll begin to feel unlimited and infinite. And that, what that feels like in the body is openness and freedom, expansion, peace, all of that. And it's really the only choice we have is where we put our attention, isn't it? For the majority of the day. It's the only choice we have. How much of my attention goes in my free time, obviously, there's times when we have to be focused at work or whatever, but how much of the rest of my free time is my attention left to wander to the things and the people that I think I'm seeing, that I think are outside of me?
I remember once when I was watching a video by Adyashanti, he mentioned like he will never go back to the person he was before, but at the same time there was a sense, the feeling of nostalgia, like still have that nostalgia, like he still have a, how to say, not addiction, but you still feel like something you yeah, do you feel that, or you happy with like attention on the space?
The attention eventually automatically goes to the space out of habit. attention, when we first start off, our attention goes to the thoughts about things out of habit, and then that eventually switches to the opposite. Left alone, my attention goes to just the formlessness of being. I can focus on phenomena, if I need to. And that's easier knowing they're not really phenomena, they are the space appearing as that thing. And there's still a personality, there's still a fluid kind of egoic sense of self, which is useful, like now, to have this conversation with you. But it's just seen to be a sense rather than something real or permanent. Something, it's while there is a body here, there seems to be someone living in it, and that never goes away. But it's seen clearly that that's not true. And that kind of deepens into this is a software, this is something I use to run the body, this sense of being someone. It's a helpful thing when the body's there, to have a sense of someone, to know when the body's hungry, when it's tired, when it needs to rest, whatever. Does that answer your question? Hopefully, I think it.
Do you miss the time? Do you miss the time like when you 100% identify yourself as an individual?
Oh no, I don't miss it at all. No. I've forgotten most of it. I have a vague sense that it was pretty awful for quite some years, and really bad right at the end, right as I was transcending. I don't miss it at all. I wouldn't go back now if you gave me £1 billion. No way. No way.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, Lindy. We'll take Lindy. Then we'll leave it there for today.
Hi, Helen. I guess this is something that pops up intermittently, and it's been very much in the way of sitting here with you today. Just I'm working from home, and it's happened lots of times before. I'm just getting really cross that it keeps popping up. I was working on a document. It's so tiny, but it brings up so much stuff. And another colleague started working on it and changed the document while I was working on it. It really didn't affect me that much, but it's happened before. And I'm feeling outraged. And it just brings so much, just that one little thing.
Tiny little trigger produces this infinite rage, right? This,
absolutely. I mean, it's rageful. I could just jump around screaming. And I've sort of traced it back to, on the human level, as very much, very young child who felt somebody was really stopping me and getting in my way. Sort of fussing about things, and it just sort of go away, just leave me alone, let me just do what I want to do, and I've done a few I've tried a couple of contemplations, like is it really true I can't get what I want? But it doesn't quite, it's not about what I want, but that doesn't quite get it. It just sort of misses this stubborn young infantile child that just get out, go away.
I'm not laughing at you, Linda. I just remember this. Someone pull out in front of me in the supermarket, and I was just about to leave, and they pull out, just suddenly this kind of. I'm laughing because I remember this, really, really spiritual moment. I've done my shopping, and then, like the opposite experience. So. Yeah, I'm not laughing at you.
It is funny actually, and I should, and that's good actually, remembering to laugh, because I mean it's ridiculous. It really is totally ridiculous. But it's so difficult to know what to do.
It's not. You can see that it's not really about this document. It's really a deeper thing, as you said, about a very long-standing thing of, and I want you to kind of. You've done the work to see, the contemplation, and I can't get what I want. But I want you to really look at what do you want, actually. And obviously with this document, you know, it might just be, I'd like people to stop messing around with it and let me just get on with it or something. But on a deeper level, what is it that you want? What does that little child want in that moment that all those years ago that didn't feel it could have? What is it actually? Is it respect? Is it freedom? Is it appreciation?
Both respect and freedom. Do you know, those were in my head just as you spoke them.
Good,
Yes.
good. So now, because you have contemplated and come to some energetic understanding that I can get what I want, the very next thing that's going to come up is, what do I actually want? So the intensity of the emotion is because we're not clear on what it is we actually want from that kind of situation. So just recognizing, here I don't feel respected, and I don't feel so free. I feel a bit limited here. So what I do want is to feel more respect and to feel more free. And of course, I'd suggest looking at that as well, just seeing if there's anything else that comes up with that. But for me, once I began to realize as the infinite being, I can have what I want, I really began to be almost hyper aware of where I wasn't being respected by other beings, and 100 little ways like that, you know, that kind of accumulate into, actually, I'm finding it very hard to accept this now because I love myself a bit too much to kind of let people do this to me. You know, and it's an inner thing, isn't it, of I deserve something better than this now. Just being willing to admit that to yourself inside.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it is about yeah, I think deserving is probably, yeah, I think deserving is a good word, actually. Yeah, it's what also came into the mind was no, I can't remember now. That's right. I really want to not care. I really want to not care when all this happens. You know, I don't want to be triggered like this. And I think probably looking back, even, you know, when I was very little, it was like it would have been so much easier had I not been bothered, had I just been able to just go, oh, well, that's what that's
what if this is a different kind of trigger to what you've experienced before? This is your life showing you that you have shifted to a different place where you can no longer accept this inside. And that's a good thing. I can't really let people treat me in less than loving ways now. And I'm willing to admit that inside. So it's not the same kind of trigger that it was before. You know, I don't feel good enough and people keep showing me that I'm not good enough. It's more like, okay, now love is blossoming this way. And maybe my desire to be more respected is love emerging, because as I kind of admit that I want more respect, I'm going to start to get it. And that helps the other being involved as well. They're somewhere inside, they're going to be feeling guilty if they're not treating you how they would like to be treated themselves. So you're helping love emerge in that relationship, even if it's just a co-worker or someone like that.
I think the biggest problem for me is I'm just going over the top about it, really. With, you know, this,
Sorry, say that again. It's
tiny,
gone.
I think I might be going over the top about this. You know, I'm seeing triggers. I'm seeing this even where it's not happening. It's the typical, you know, I'm seeing, yeah, it's so big that I'm putting this on loads of things, even where it's not true.
That's
even in a shop, you know.
That's only because now you have to look at what you do want out of life. So much of our attention has gone to what we don't want, that we've been experiencing again and again and again. And finally now, you've arrived at a place where you can begin to let that come from the inside out. And you will feel as disturbed as you, it is kind of to keep you focused on, every time I'm looking at what I don't want, I'll feel bad. Every time I'm focused on what I do want, I'll feel good. So it will kind of stay like this a little bit until you kind of keep your focus on how would you want to be treated? How do you want to feel? How do you want to move through your life? What do you want your relationships to be now? Because now it can actually show up for you. But we just, as human beings, we have this habit to go back to, yes, but look at my experience. My experience isn't that, you know, so just to keep your attention on, and I'd suggest do some journaling on it, or just spend some time pondering. Any time that you start to feel that way, it's because your attention has wandered back to what you don't want. Yeah.
And I think I'm projecting it. I'm very aware I'm doing the same, projecting that out onto other people, and then feeling really guilty afterwards.
So you get stuck in a cycle. So you can break out of it because as you ask the question, what do I want? That I is not just in that body there. I want to be respected. Don't we all want to be liked, loved, respected, appreciated? And as you allow this for yourself, it's going to automatically start to happen with everyone around you. They'll be unable to interact with you in those old ways, and they'll feel more respected themselves and more appreciated themselves. And all of your relationships get this kind of upgrade to this mutually beneficial thing, rather than the usual type of human relationship. And those that don't want to participate in it with you will kind of disappear from your experience. You know, those that don't want to respect you. The moment you want or are willing to admit what you want, respect and appreciation, all of that, it has to show up. And until we do that, our life keeps showing us the opposite. It has to. Because those other beings that we want respect from are also us. You know, and it's that cycle, like you said. You are so much more awakened than you will let yourself admit. And with that awakening, and that goes for everyone, not just you, but in terms of this conversation, with that awakening comes a little responsibility. I need to be a little more careful where my focus is. Is it on what I do want or what I don't want? And I had to kind of redefine. Most of us are so hopelessly detached from what we actually want because we just don't feel we can have it. Now something is powerfully waking up inside. And really, respect, love, appreciation, all of that, they're synonyms. Love is, the respect is just a polite word for love, isn't it, really? Appreciation, admiration, all of that.
Yeah. So maybe now with this slightly changed perspective, going back to, is it really true I can't have what I want, might be worth going back to that one. Now I've kind of reframed it.
I wouldn't if I were you. I think you've done that work. Just my feeling. But it might be helpful to say, when you start to feel that way, here is where love wants to emerge. You don't have to say it to the other person. You know, oh, goody, we're going to get an upgrade, you know. But inside yourself, this is love about ready to emerge even deeper here, or respect, or whichever socially acceptable form it's going to come out as. If you remind yourself, this is where love wants to emerge. Anytime I'm feeling bad, love and respect and all of that. Okay. It is an openness, then it can actually appear, can't it? Lovely. Okay. Thank you for bringing that forward. It's valuable for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll leave it there for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for your intelligent questions and sharings, and brave sharings, definitely. Namaste.